There are some stories in Hollywood that glitter so brightly we forget to ask what it costs to shine that way. Brooke Shields was one of them. From the moment she stepped into the world of Pretty Baby in 1978 and later drifted across the screen in The Blue Lagoon in 1980, she became an American symbol. A girl the world felt entitled to watch, to judge, to shape. And while millions admired her beauty, her poise, her impossible calm under the harshest lights, almost no one stopped to wonder what it felt like to be a child raised inside a camera lens. For decades, she carried that weight with elegance, even when it bent her spirit. But something happened as she approached 70, something quiet and heartbreaking. A shift so profound, it softened the steel she had built around herself. It was a moment of truth she had never allowed the world to see. A crack in the armor, revealing the fragile, tender woman beneath the legend. And once you understand the depth of that revelation, it becomes almost impossible to look at her story the same way again. Brooke Shields entered the world on a chilly spring day in 1965, born in Manhattan, New York, unaware that her life would unfold under a brightness few children ever experience. From the beginning, her mother, Terry Shields, stood at the center of her story, a complicated force of love and ambition. Terry was both protector and manager, holding her daughter close with one hand and pushing her into the spotlight with the other. For some children, the world widened slowly, in gentle circles. For Brooke, it narrowed into a lens almost immediately. At just 11 months old, she was placed in front of a camera, launching a modeling career before she could form complete sentences. Ads, shoots, strangers adjusting her tiny hands and face, flashes of light she could not yet comprehend. These were her earliest memories, shaped not by playgrounds or carefree afternoons, but by studios and the expectations of adults who saw potential before they saw a child. And while her mother insisted she was always by her side, Brooke grew up learning that presence does not always equal protection. By the time she reached adolescence, she was already known around the world. Pretty Baby, released in 1978, propelled her into a realm of fame few 13-year-olds could navigate. The performance was haunting, bold, controversial, and unforgettable, but it also set in motion a childhood defined not by innocence, but by interpretation. People debated her, analyzed her, judged her, often forgetting she was still a girl with soft fears and fragile dreams. Brooke became a symbol before she became a teenager, a phenomenon the world consumed eagerly, never worrying about the emotional cost. Then came The Blue Lagoon in 1980, and the attention intensified. Suddenly she was not just a young actress but an international icon, admired, scrutinized, and objectified. Movie posters plastered with her face became part of pop culture history, yet behind those images was a teenager struggling to understand why the world spoke about her body more than her voice. She was praised for beauty she did not ask to carry, placed into scenes she had no control over, and expected to perform with a maturity that had not yet had time to develop. Fame gave her everything adults chase, and yet nothing a child truly needs. She famously smiled on magazine covers, walked red carpets with poise, and seemed to glide through early success. But inside, she carried a quiet loneliness rarely acknowledged. It is a particular ache only children in the spotlight know. The feeling of being surrounded and watched yet never really seen. Brooke herself has said that she often felt like she lived two lives, the one she performed for the world and the hidden one that swelled silently inside her. Her mother loved her fiercely, but that love came with a weight, a mix of protection, pride, ambition, and control. Terry watched the world through Brooke's experiences almost as much as Brooke did, shaping her days, her opportunities, even her image. For a child, that kind of closeness becomes both comfort and constraint. Brooke grew up understanding that the success that dazzled outsiders was also the thing that stole pieces of her childhood. And yet, through all the noise, she developed something deeper than fame. She learned resilience early, Learn to carry emotion quietly. Learn to navigate chaos with grace. The world saw a girl glowing in the center of attention, but the truth was far gentler, far more heartbreaking. Behind the photographs and movie posters was a child craving space to breathe, longing for the simple freedom to grow at her own pace. This was the foundation of Brooke Shields' story, the beginning of a journey shaped by brilliance and burden, affection and pressure, visibility and profound solitude. By the time Brooke Shields reached young adulthood, she had lived more lives than most people ever would. Yet, beneath the fame and the carefully maintained composure was a girl longing for something ordinary, something rooted, something that felt like hers. And so, with the world watching, she did something unexpected. She stepped away from Hollywood's blinding light and walked into the quiet, brick-lined pathways of Princeton University, determined to reclaim the pieces of herself that had been shaped for her rather than by her. She entered Princeton with the same seriousness she brought to every challenge, choosing to study French literature. It was not a decision made for publicity or image. It was a choice made from hunger, the hunger for authenticity, for intellectual grounding, for the chance to grow without a camera waiting at the edge of every moment. Surrounded by students who cared more about books than red carpets, she felt for the first time the possibility of being seen simply as Brooke, not as a headline or a myth. But normalcy did not come easily. Even in the safe haven of academia, fame followed her like a shadow she could not escape. Some classmates approached her with awe, others with skepticism, many with assumptions about who she was and what she represented. Navigating their reactions became a daily emotional exercise, one that forced Brooke to confront the complicated layers of her identity. She was admired and criticized, loved and judged, often at the same time. Even in classrooms, even in libraries, she felt the strange isolation of someone known by everyone yet understood by very few. Her relationship with her mother also grew more complex during this time. Terry Shields had built Brooke's world and protected her from its harshest corners, but she had also shaped decisions that many believed should have belonged to Brooke herself. As Brooke tasted independence, she also began asserting boundaries, learning how to say no, how to choose differently, how to untangle herself from the grip of a mother whose love could be both nurturing and consuming. Setting those boundaries carried emotional weight. There was guilt, grief, and confusion, but also relief. The slow, steady relief of finally allowing herself to breathe. The journey was not without its challenges. Brooke worked tirelessly to excel academically, eventually graduating in 1987 with honors. The ceremony itself felt symbolic, a quiet reclaiming of her own narrative. She had walked into Princeton as a young woman trying to remember who she truly was. She walked out with a clearer understanding of her strength, her intellect, and her capacity to build a life that was not defined solely by the world's gaze. After Princeton, Brooke returned to acting, stepping into adulthood roles in both film and television with a renewed sense of agency. There was a different energy in her performances now, a groundedness shaped not by a manager's direction but by a woman who had found her voice. Though the criticism continued at times and the admiration sometimes felt just as heavy, Brooke faced it all with a maturity forged in the quiet hours of study halls and late-night essays. This chapter of her life revealed something tender and deeply human, that for all her fame, Brooke Shields longed, like everyone else, for a life that felt true. She had been a child seen through a camera lens, but now as a young woman, she worked to see herself clearly. Her years at Princeton were not an escape from her past, but a reclamation, a gentle returning to her own heart after years of living in the world's imagination. Through this she found purpose, clarity, and the beginning of a self-defined life. As Brooke Shields moved into the next chapter of her life, love became both a sanctuary and a teacher, revealing new layers of her strength and her vulnerability. In 1997, she married tennis star Andre Agassi, a union that the public viewed as a fairy tale pairing of two icons, both admired, both disciplined, both shaped by early fame. Yet, behind the glamorous surface, the marriage carried strains neither had anticipated. Two people who had spent their lives performing for the world were suddenly expected to perform again, this time for each other. The pressure, the scrutiny, and the emotional distance that fame had carved into both of them slowly surfaced. By 1999, the marriage ended, leaving Brooke with a quiet ache, a sense of loss not just for what was, but for what she had hoped their life together could become. But life, in its gentle unpredictability, offered her another beginning. In 2001, Brooke married producer Chris Henchy, a partnership rooted in humor, patience, and steady emotional grounding. With Chris, Brooke found a different kind of love, one that did not demand perfection but encouraged honesty. It was a love that allowed her to exhale. Together they built a home woven with laughter and companionship, a space where Brooke could lay down the mask she had worn for so long. Still, there were challenges she never expected. Brooke longed to become a mother, but conceiving became a painful struggle. The journey was filled with hope and heartbreak, doctor visits and unanswered questions, and the private fear that maybe motherhood would elude her after all the sacrifices she had already endured. Each setback left its mark, softening her voice, deepening her empathy, reminding her again that even the most admired women carry silent wounds. When her first daughter was finally born, the world saw the glow of a new mother, but Brooke's reality was far more complicated. Instead of feeling the joy she had envisioned, she found herself sinking into a darkness she could not explain. She battled postpartum depression, an illness she had never been warned about, a heaviness that made even the smallest tasks feel impossible. It was not sadness, not weakness, but a chemical storm that stole her ability to connect, to rest, even to recognize herself. For months, she fought quietly, ashamed to admit what she was feeling. She feared judgment, misunderstanding, and the harshness of public opinion. Yet when she finally sought help, she discovered that healing was possible. And in that healing, she discovered purpose. Her experience became the foundation for her memoir, Down Came the Rain, a deeply honest account of her struggle through postpartum depression and her path back to emotional clarity. Her decision to speak publicly was brave. She risked criticism, yet she chose truth instead of silence, vulnerability instead of performance. In doing so, she opened the door for countless women who felt alone, misunderstood, or dismissed in their own battles with maternal mental health. Her advocacy became a lifeline for mothers across the world, showing them that pain did not mean failure, and that healing was a profound act of strength. Brooke later welcomed her second daughter, and motherhood became not just a role but a resurrection. It grounded her, softened her, and reshaped her understanding of love. Her home grew fuller, her laughter deeper, her heart braver. This period of Brooke Shields' life marks the moment she stepped into a fuller version of herself, a woman who loved fiercely, hurt deeply, healed bravely, and chose honesty over image. It revealed her not as a figure on a screen, but as a mother, a partner, and a survivor, navigating life with tenderness and unshakable humanity. By the time Brooke Shields reached her mid-50s, she believed she had already survived the hardest chapters of her life. She had endured the glare of childhood fame, the pressure of adulthood reinvention, and the deeply private trials of motherhood. But in 2021, a single moment brought her to her knees, literally and emotionally, when she slipped during a routine workout and suffered a devastating femur fracture. It happened so quickly, so violently, that Brooke later said she remembered the sound more than the pain, a sharp crack that echoed like the breaking of a lifetime of strength she had worked so hard to build. It was the beginning of a long, excruciating journey she could never have imagined. The injury required immediate hospitalization, followed by surgeries that left her with metal rods and scars that ran deeper than the skin. Doctors told her plainly that recovery would be slow, difficult, and uncertain. Brooke, who had always fought through life's storms with quiet determination, suddenly found herself unable to walk, unable to stand, unable to do even the simplest things without assistance. She entered months of intense rehabilitation, a process that stripped her of independence and forced her to relearn what she had always taken for granted. For someone who had spent her entire life performing strength, beauty, and control for the world, the vulnerability was overwhelming. But the physical trials did not end there. During her recovery, Brooke developed a dangerous staph infection, a complication that placed her in sudden life-threatening danger. She later described the moment with a quiet tremble, acknowledging how close she came to losing everything. The infection spread rapidly, and doctors warned her that if they did not intervene immediately, the consequences could be catastrophic. It was the kind of moment that stops time, reminding even the strongest among us how fragile the body truly is. Brooke faced it with the same courage that had carried her through decades of public scrutiny, but this time, the fear was raw, private, and deeply human. For months, she pushed her body through rehab, celebrating tiny milestones most people never think twice about: standing without shaking, taking one step, then two, lifting her leg without crying. It was a journey that humbled her in ways that fame never could. She learned patience in moments of frustration, learned gentleness in moments of pain, and learned gratitude for the simple gift of movement. With every hesitant step, she confronted the echoes of her past, the years when she felt controlled, objectified, and rushed into adulthood before she ever had a chance to understand herself. Healing her body began to feel strangely connected to healing the little girl who once stood alone behind the bright lights. And now, at 70, Brooke speaks of that time with a softness that surprises even her. She says the accident changed everything. It forced her into stillness, forced her to listen to the emotions she had buried beneath years of smiling photographs and polished interviews. It made her acknowledge the exhaustion of a life lived under constant expectation, a life where her body was always watched, always judged. The fracture did more than break a bone. It broke open the truth she had carried silently for decades. Today, Brooke Shields says that aging did not diminish her. It liberated her. She feels more present, more honest, and more connected to herself than she ever has been. The woman who grew up in front of the world now stands grounded in her own story, no longer defined by the gaze of others. After a lifetime of surviving pressure, perfection, and pain, she has found something she never had before: peace. As the years unfolded, Brooke Shields discovered a purpose far larger than the fame that once defined her. She became a powerful advocate for women's rights, openly challenging the impossible standards placed on young girls, mothers, and aging women. She spoke about autonomy, about dignity, and about the importance of allowing women to own their stories. She used her voice to bring visibility to issues that had long been whispered about but rarely confronted. Mental health became one of her greatest missions, particularly after sharing her own painful experience with postpartum depression. She refused to let silence swallow women's suffering, and her honesty became a lifeline for countless mothers who felt unseen. Her writing became another place where she allowed truth to breathe. Her memoirs, including her best-selling book Down Came the Rain, revealed a side of her that audiences had never witnessed, a woman who was tired of pretending she was fine. She had written other best-selling works throughout her career, each one peeling back another layer of the girl the world thought they knew. Through her books, she showed a depth, vulnerability, and intelligence that critics had long overlooked. She wrote not to shock, but to heal. And in doing so, she helped others begin their own healing journeys. Even as she stepped into advocacy and authorship, Brooke continued to work in front of the camera and on stage. She returned to film and television with a maturity that allowed her to choose roles not for survival, but for joy. Broadway, too, became a home for her. She performed in celebrated productions such as Chicago, Cabaret, and Wonderful Town, earning respect for her discipline and presence. The stage brought a new kind of freedom, A place where she could use her voice without being spoken over, and move her body without being objectified. It was art on her terms, and for the first time, she felt fully in control of how she shared herself with the world. But the most profound transformation did not happen under bright lights or in front of an applauding audience. It happened quietly, gently. As she approached 70, Brooke began to feel a shift, one that surprised her with its softness. She found herself looking back at her life, not with bitterness, but with gratitude. She no longer carried anger toward her mother, Terry, a woman who had both protected and pressured her. Instead, she understood her. She saw the fear, the ambition, and the complicated love that shaped their relationship. Forgiveness did not come quickly, but it came honestly, blooming from a place of wisdom rather than obligation. Her relationship with her own reflection changed too. For decades, the world had dictated what she should look like, how she should age, how she should behave. But now she looked at herself with a tenderness she never knew she deserved. She embraced the lines that mapped her experiences, the softness that came with time, the strength she had earned step by step, especially after her injury. Aging no longer felt like a loss, it felt like a reclamation, a return to the girl she once was, and the woman she fought to become. And that is the truth of what happened to Brooke Shields at 70. It was not a scandal, not a tragedy, not a downfall. It was a collision of wisdom and vulnerability, a moment where everything she had survived finally transformed into something whole. She allowed herself to be human, fully and unapologetically. She allowed herself peace. After a lifetime of being watched, Brooke Shields finally learned how to see herself. In the end, Brooke Shields' story is not one of survival alone, but one of transformation. She lived a life shaped by pressure long before she understood what pressure meant, pushed into the light before she ever learned how to stand in it. Yet through every wound, every expectation, every moment where the world claimed ownership of her image, she found a way to reclaim herself. Her advocacy, her writing, her performances, and her honesty became the legacy she crafted with intention rather than circumstance. At 70, she stands not as the girl the world once defined, but as the woman she chose to become, a woman shaped by grace, resilience, and emotional truth. Her journey reminds us that healing is not a single moment, it is a lifetime of choosing to rise, choosing to forgive, choosing to breathe again. And maybe that is what makes her story so deeply human. For more emotional stories, check out this video.